So I'd like to welcome our next guest today is Alex Wharton, who is a poet and performer from Torfaen. And I really want to speak to Alex because he does a lot of work with young people and children with the arts and with poetry. So I thought it'd be really interesting to have his take about, you know, the benefits of creation with children, really. So thank you, Alex, for joining us. And
thank you, Patrick.
That's okay, lovely. I thought it'd be nice to start off really just to find out a little bit about you and where the poetry came from, and was there a catalyst when you were younger? And perhaps you can describe a bit of your journey as a writer to us.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, I would say that I've been writing poetry as an understanding of writing poetry, as a desire to be better at writing poetry. Then, probably only for. Well, I'm 31 now, almost 32, and I was 27 when I started writing poetry and started, like I said, for the want of doing it, for the want of sharing poetry then.
Yeah.
But I suppose when I was younger, I would write. I was part of like a little rap group and things like that. So it's not that I've never really been one with trying to understand lyricism and trying to understand what writing means. But it wasn't with me for my late teenage years, for my early 20s, until it just kind of came to me then at 27, really.
And was there a catalyst? Was there something that happened at that time in life, or not, or just someone influenced you? Or
yeah, well, I know exactly the time it happened. I suppose it was a strange time, and maybe there was a bit of finding, a bit of restlessness going on with myself. I think I was writing, I was journaling, and I was just enjoying writing, enjoying taking notes down about my lifestyle, about my children, just life,
Yeah.
It came to something where I just started writing poetry. And from there on, I didn't stop, really. It was just a way to contextualize things that I couldn't grasp, I think. Things that I couldn't grasp through just prose, through just writing in a diary, And it just helped. It was the artistic element of it, because I think when you're writing poetry, or when I'm writing poetry, it's a bit like building a dream. When you go to bed and you want to build a dream before you go to sleep, build something good for yourself, That's how I see it. That's like how I've always seen it. It's building something. And you can make it what you want. It doesn't have to be a good thing, but, it could be good and bad depending on whatever you want to portray at the time. But it's the building of it, and then it's the reflection too, looking back and seeing something artistic, seeing a piece of art, because what it is art. And then, I don't know, you just feel a little bit different when you start writing poetry, when you express yourself through poems, as opposed to just through a diary format, There's something different about it. It's not for everybody, and some people don't understand it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's a lovely thing. It's around us all the time, either way. So
that's lovely. I love that phrase you said about building a dream, like a poem, like a builder builds a wall, a house, etc. Yeah. But we do that with words.
That's the background that I come from. That's the background that I come from. I've been in the building industry.
Yeah.
And I've done these things, and there's a certain craft in it all. There's an artfulness in everything, almost, when you start to think about it, And it's just doing something with a certain love, doing something with a certain passion is what it's all about for me, really. And with poetry, I see it as something progressive, something that there's a togetherness with it, because when you share a poem, it's, you're bringing other people into your story then, you're bringing other people in. And it's, like I say, it's a lovely thing, really.
Thank you. Okay. And on your website, you great pictures of you in schools, which is great to see a poet in schools and that. And was there a conscious decision to say write for children or to do more work with children? Because a lot of poets sometimes, look down on writing for children, which is crazy, because I think the greatest stories and the greatest poets are kids sometimes, aren't they? So I wondered, was it a conscious choice, or obviously you've got children yourself, so you just love words and.
Yeah. Well, going back to what I said about getting into poetry, there wasn't a small time when I started writing children's stories, actually, when I was maybe about 20. But again, I was, at the time, I remember writing these stories, making up stories for my sons at bedtime, and then thinking, I don't know, I think I'm, pretty good at this, and then started writing them down. Obviously, it was probably really bad or whatever, but, I did that, and I did write them down. And I remember thinking at the time, I'd like to go into schools and just share this with the children, looking back on when I was in school and not really remembering that happening much, and thinking, the people who did come into the school, you do remember, but it wasn't a regular thing. Not that I know, you know, that it can't be really, but if you've got a good teacher who can give you story time, then that's fine, isn't it? That's the great thing. But having someone new, someone fresh, someone who looks different coming into your class is a big thing for a child, isn't it? You know?
Definitely, you're right. Yeah.
So yeah, I remember feeling like, you know, perhaps I could do this, but it all went away. I think I was too much living my life through kind of how other people saw me, like external perceptions of me, as opposed to leaning into the things that I actually like and the things that make me happy. So it kind of went away. So going back to, it came back then, it found me again. That's how I feel. At 27, I was writing my diary, and then I just turned into poetry, and so it found me again, really. So, so going into the schools and everything. Oh yeah, I think that's what you said. Was that like a conscious thing? When did that conscious thing for children? Yeah. So I started off writing for adults. I was going to open mics and just enjoying that. But then I suppose, like you said, because I had the boys, because I lived with the boys, I would try and, you know, read them a poem and see what they think about it, even adults' poems, and they'd be like, yeah, that's good, yeah, that's a good performance or whatever. But then I started feeling like I wanted to bring them into it more, and maybe how they would feel about poems that speak to them more, you know.
Yes.
And then it went from there. I really did want to go to schools and start reading poems and start working on poems with children, even though there was a part of me that felt like, oh, but is that something I can do? You know, I haven't studied this in university. This isn't, maybe I'm getting, you know, thinking a bit big, but it's not about that. It's about everybody's voice, isn't it? And we all bring something different. And it's that accepting that has just pushed me and allowed me to just do what I do.
That's lovely. Yeah, no, I totally get that, you know, having children myself, and the power of words and stories. And, you know, I remember when particularly my middle son, he was about 10 or 11, and I used to go and read. And then one day he put his hand up as to say, you know, read with him, that he didn't want me to read with him anymore. And I was quite, you know, put out. But it was great that he was going off on his journey then, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I've been reading to my boy. Well, no, you know, they don't want to, but I was reading to my boys right up to comp and still in comp, you know.
Wow.
And bringing it together, you know, we would be reading, you know, maybe I'd read a chapter and then they'd read a few pages. We did it with so many books, and it's been a great thing. It's been a great togetherness in that, reading to each other.
Yeah. So going back to the schools, and I think it really, you know, I'm really interested in, because there's a lot of talk at the moment about, you know, mental health crisis, and that well-being is bandied around. It's almost become a bit of a brand, and you can see all the multinationals thinking, oh, there's money to be made here. But if you take it back to the core, and like people like yourself go into schools, you know, on a rainy Tuesday somewhere, you know, up the valleys, what do you notice is the power of words and poetry to, you know, the kids in primary school that you work with? What do you see going on?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do I see? I think the ability to express themselves freely, I think, and you know, taking all the rules away. Because I'll be honest, the reason you know, maybe it is that I take the rules away is because I don't know the rules. Is there rules? Are there rules? I don't know. That's not the poetry I know, you know. And the poetry that I know and I like is a visual thing. So when I write poems, I like to see how it ends up looking on the page.
Yeah.
I'm not really so deep into it in the sense that I'm going to criticize people for being, oh, you know, there's not enough syllables there, or there's not this or that, you know, it's not for me. So the poetry that I kind of share with the children and kind of promoting them is just freedom of expression, you know. That's not to say I don't know anything about structured poetry, but when I'm doing it with children year 5, year 6, and I think they just want to express themselves, and you put too many rules on them, that's from what I see, that's not what they like, and from what I remember, that's not what I would like. And so when I'm saying to them, you know, just do that, and they're like, can I do this there? And I'm like, you know, of course you can. It goes without saying. When I draw a little picture, oh, look, yeah, this is what I do. This is what I'd like to do too. Scribble around it, you know, do whatever makes you happy with it, because it's a little piece of you, and you know, it needs to be something that you like.
Yeah, no, that's like a little manifesto. I think that's really interesting, and I think that sense of freedom then can unleash that sense of, oh, I can do that, and it can build confidence and self-esteem.
Perfect. And that's what they say when they come up to me, the amount of children, you know, and I just love it when children say, hey, they leave and they say, I'm going to be a poet. And I just think, are you? And I'm like, yeah, well done. Of course you are. You already are, because you just wrote that poem, you know, and it was a fantastic poem. You just performed it to your whole class, you know, and, you know, you're a poet already.
And that's really, it is really refreshing to hear, because, you know, there is still that thing about, you know, poetry has to be a certain way. It must scant, you know, they are that elitist, you know, in Wales as well. You can come across them.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I kind of think, imagine if someone had said to Gareth Bale, you know,
Yeah.
oh, this is the way you must play football as a kid.
Yeah.
He's going to walk away from it, isn't he? It's like, and poetry's the same. Let's take that ball and go wherever you want with it, really, as long as you don't harm anyone. So it's great to hear your take.
Yeah, it's your choice. It's you know, it is your choice. People read poems at birthday parties and at funerals and all these things, you know. They're not conditioned poets, they're not seasoned poets. They just they speak from their heart at that given time. I mean, when you are a writer and you know, you're calling yourself a poet, you're going around, it's becoming more professional. Obviously, you've got a duty to progress your art form, and it will grow and it will change. You know, I look back on some poems that I wrote 5 years ago and I think, oof, man, glad I didn't read that anyway. That's in back. Well, you know, it just feels like, oh, I was quite naive there, whatever it be. But you grow as an artist, you grow as a writer, and just as a person in general. So it's not to be ashamed or embarrassed, I suppose, by anything done in the past. It's all part of the progressive journey into where you are right now.
Definitely,
I think there's different type of writers. There's writers that write for themselves. There are writers that write for an audience, anybody, and there are writers that write particularly for their peers, for other writers.
Yes.
And that's when you can get a bit lost in it, I think, because some things, I don't know about you, but I read and I don't understand it. I think, you know, perhaps one day I will understand this, but it's so deeply laced with metaphor and everything that it's almost hard to comprehend.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And that's okay if you've had this life of kind of high literature and all of that. But I read, you know, top end literature. You know, I'll read Dickens, I'll read anything. But there are levels with poetry that you do think, who is this open to? You know?
Yeah, I totally agree.
So it's important to remember that fine line when you're bringing poetry to children, and it's that openness. That's not to say they wouldn't like all of those other things, but it's just to say that this is for you, this is for me. And this is something that we can be together on, and it'll make us feel a certain way, happy, sad, whatever it be. That's
lovely. Thank you. Yeah, you prompt to a great quote that I was going to share with you, but you've almost sort of answered it. But I wonder what you think of this. I think you've sort of answered it. It's by the American writer James Baldwin, who I love. James Baldwin. I think ahead of his time, you know.
Yes.
He said, "You think your pain is unique in the history of the world, and then you read." And that's the quote. And I think, do you know, that is, it says so much, doesn't it?
Yeah. There's something about something like that just wraps around you and makes you feel, well, whether it makes you feel safe or whatever, but there's a perfect understanding in that, isn't there? You know?
Yeah. You read,
the world is open to you when you read. You may never have traveled the seas. You may never have flown on a plane and been anywhere else. But if you've wrapped yourself and found yourself in certain literature, whatever it be, then your eyes are more open than they would have been, aren't they?
Totally. And you don't feel as alone. Someone else speaking that silence you've got. And I think that's so important, especially these days we're living in. You know?
Exactly. James Baldwin, I do think it's fine, right? Well, it goes without saying, doesn't it? Yeah. It goes without saying.
And so as a writer yourself, and perhaps your knowledge of, you know, working with young people, can art help with our mental health?
Like for me, Patrick, what I will say is as well, and again, probably going back to that time, and I didn't really comment on it, maybe I didn't elaborate there, but I would say when I said there's a certain restlessness when I started writing poetry, I think it was a therapy that I didn't realize was a therapy at the time. You know, I think I might have been struggling a bit at the time, not even knowing, not even understanding why. And then I started writing. So it's a kind of savior to me. I do believe that, just like nature is to me. I find myself walking around in nature and I feel like, you know, that's it. I'm found now, when I can allow my mind to kind of open up over this landscape and come back and feel better for it. And it's the same with writing poetry. You know, sometimes you can't write. That's a thing. And I felt that too. Sometimes you can't express yourself through with it. But most of the time, when you're ready, you can, even if it's in reflection. So I think for mental health, my art, poetry, or anybody's art, whatever it be, it's a key element to keeping yourself safe and keeping yourself grounded and open.
Definitely. Okay, thank you. It's just say you were head of the Arts Council now coming out of this pandemic, and you had a magic wand. What things could you offer, perhaps, do you think, to, what would you like to offer, do you think, using art to, say, foster a better society? Well, why not think big? Any magic
Yeah,
ideas?
I think, well, one thing would be in schools, linking school. Well, I mean, we could have more art galleries, couldn't we? We could have more art galleries, let's face it, and art and poetry together, and bringing this understanding of trying to explain and find yourself through visual art, through words again.
Yes.
So I've given people my ideas now, but anyway, go ahead and do it, because the more the better. But a little idea of mine would have been to have some nice place to go, and there are plenty of these places, but I always think about combining art with that, bringing schools in to it, and thinking, okay, look, we're exhibiting art this week, we're going to have a competition, or some sort of competition, and you can have your art or poems exhibited on the walls, and then you can bring families in. So then you're bringing families, schools, and people working in the community together. They're going to go and sit there and sit underneath the art that their child is so finely and exhibiting. And I do think little things like that, bringing art just into our daily lives more often, into the community. And I know that's just one idea, but that's just something I feel that would be lovely to see. Or whether it's in your supermarket, whatever. And I'm sure they might do things like this, but let's just get the children and anybody showing off their work in public more often.
Yeah, definitely. It's you're talking about access, really, aren't you? So it's not just access and
access for everybody. Access without the will to access something, though. Things need to just be accessible without you even knowing. Things need to just be there, so then they can just seep into you.
Okay.
As if you search for something, where you're going to find. You're searching for it because you want to. I pick up books of poetry when I need them because I need them. But other people, they might not realize a poem could just be all they need right now.
Yeah, I like that. So it's just there. It's almost there. Yeah. Okay. And talking about that sort of thing, in a way, another question I've been asking the artists I've been talking to is, if there was a song or a poem or a film or a painting that was, in a way, helped you along the way, something you always go back to. Is there anything comes to mind, an album or something which is pivotal perhaps to your life? Yeah,
I suppose I listen. To be honest, I like a lot of improvisation kind of music and experimental jazz, those kind of things. Well, when I write, for example, I can't really listen to anything with lyrics in. I need to just have that freedom. I like Coltrane and Miles Davis and this music that is quite escaping and very, very creative, and you lose yourself in it. And I'm okay to do that, because you will find yourself again somewhere amongst it. But for a while, you've probably done some nice writing, or you've done things subconsciously that you might not have,
Yeah.
So music like that has been good to me. It's been good to me and also through the quarantine as well. I find myself listening to these things. There's a brilliant contemporary artist, Tom Misch, and he's like a bit of a funk experimental guitarist and singer, but I like especially the ones that are just instrumental,
right?
Because they build and they gather, and then it's lovely.
And it gives you that space then to your own mind go somewhere.
I think so. You could be doing anything at the time. You could be watering your plants, or you could be trying to write, or you could just be sitting and just enjoying it, but something's going on. That's not to say I don't, lyricism is really important to me, and I listen to so much music, but I would say music, Nina Simone, all of these people who really sing from the soul, this beautiful thing, they make you feel, I don't know, something special, something real human, or not, something spiritual about it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Talking about this time as well, what have you learned about yourself as a human, as an artist, as a dad? This time, at this time, what have you learned?
During this quarantine and this lockdown. Well, actually, and we've briefly spoken on this on media. I won't go too much into it, but I've been going through some changes in my life. My partner and myself going separate ways, but we got children, so we're trying to do the best and be there for each other. But nevertheless, it's a deep and sad time, So for me, it's strange because it feels like there's been two quarantines. There's been pre-breakup quarantine, and it sounds terrible, and then the quarantine during these changes.
Yeah.
So you know, thinking about before all of this happened in my actual personal life, as opposed to everything going on the outside. And now with reflection of what's going on in my life, it's a bit more like learning. I feel like unlearning. And that sounds a bit strange, but I feel that maybe I've been too focused on, not that you can be too focused, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. It's not that I don't care anymore. I'm always caring, but maybe I care so much that then I don't care about myself, you know?
Right.
And
yeah.
I think that's got to start. I got to start thinking more about how I feel, my own mental health, my own family, you know?
Yeah.
So there's a bit of unlearning ways. Well, it's still learning. You know what I mean, don't you?
Yeah. No,
but it's unraveling and dismantling some of the things that were consuming me, maybe. It's a seriousness. I'm happy and I'm open and I'm many things, but I don't know what it is. Maybe it's being a poet. Maybe you do take on world topics and maybe you can allow them to consume you, but I don't think you should. I think that you should have a fine balance with it and keep putting in the good things that you do. Like when I write a new poem and I share it with children, that's a new thing in the world. And it's a good thing from my perspective instead of a bad thing. But if I'm focused on all of the bad things entering the world every day, then what am I going to do? You know, what am I going to do? Where do I end up then as a person, you know, and as a father, as a partner? So honestly, it's been strange. I've probably done less listening to what's going on in the world lately, which is, again, for me, I'm always on tune. I'm always right on it with everything. I'll never miss question time. I never miss daily. Anything going on, I want to know, you know, because I feel like my opinion on it then is important, and it's, you know, it's always shaping you. It's always shaping you how you feel. But you know this, Patrick, we're bombarded with it, you know, Twitter. It's a place that can be really hostile. And I have a lovely group of Twitter people, really, yourself included, and people who are sharing art, who are sharing political feelings. It's a nice mixture. But when it's hitting you from every angle, every media aspect, and you can see all the division that's going on, we know what's going on. But so many people don't, and so many people are lost amongst it. And it's quite upsetting to see the division that's being caused. So much the quarantine, but all of this other thing that's going on now, and I don't know. World's going crazy.
I think that's really, really interesting approach, because it's almost like it saturates us so much. We almost be stripped of our own individuality because we just That's interesting. I think social media, even I'm not, you know, I'm older than you, obviously, so I can remember pre-social media time when, you know, and like you, I tried to be socially engaged and rage about things that really affect me. But it seems, because there's such an instant world there, you read something, I must respond to that then, and then you try and write it, and it almost gets you out of breath.
So you were writing from a young age, Patrick?
Not really young, not, you know, not terrible in school. I hated poetry in school. Used to fall Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. Really struggled with it, you know, never in a top set. It was probably 18, 19 when I was, you know, writing, which is not that young, but, you know, terrible poetry. I went to Swansea University and fell in love with the Beat Generation writers. Harrow Atkinsburg. So quite late in many ways. And then, I don't think I had a poem published for about 10 years, you know, which is, so, you know, it's like, it's almost deluded in a way, you know, you're thinking, I am a writer. But like you said, if you get up and write, you are a writer, you know. And I think that for you going into schools and telling kids about your journey, I think that's really empowering for them. I only thought that poets would be in Oxford or Cambridge when I was growing up, you know. So
me too.
Breaking down those barriers.
Yeah, me too. It's not something I thought about. Like I say, and that's why I say it's just something that just found me. It was a happening that I got carried away with. You know, thankfully, I never let it go. You know, it found me and I didn't let it go. I couldn't, because I kept enjoying what I was producing, even if it was only me enjoying it. I knew it meant something to me. You know, and then it means then you surpass that and it starts meaning something to others, and that's like, you know, you found them.
And just a couple of last questions. I saw that you the Rising Stars Award 2020 you won. So that tell us about that. How did that happen, and what did you have to do for that?
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I mean, it was so that was an initiative for you know, underrepresented writers, and so I just thought, well, you know, okay, I'd already had a meeting with someone from Literature Wales, and so then you're on the kind of email list then, and they kind of got in touch or whatever. So I thought, well, I'll put it out there. I'd already published quite a lot of children's poems, and you know, haiku poems with places like Wales Haiku Journal. And I really like haiku, actually, by the way. I think it's a great way to learn how to be technical about your writing, because there's not enough space for failures in there, you know, and they're just lovely thoughts, you know, one breath poems, whatever you want to call them. They're nice. They're nice.
Yeah.
Getting carried away there. What was I?
Writing Stars Award. How did you win it, really?
Yeah. So I submitted, I think, 5 or 6 poems to that, and a bit about myself and the things that I do and all of that. And yeah, I was awarded with it, which was, like I say, really thankful. I was supposed to go to Tea Newydd and have like a week or 5 nights away, and that's a bit of a treat. But obviously, then all this kind of occurred, and I haven't done that yet. But I look forward to going there. And you know, furthermore, for everything that's happened now, I've just been put onto as a tutor at Tea Newydd for a writing class that's going to be happening through online. But it's crazy, because I look and think, I remember looking at Tea Newydd and looking and feeling, you know, in a sense, because I didn't know a lot about it, and it looks this place, and you see these courses, and you think, you know, I'd love to be on one of those courses, and you look at the price, and you think, you know,
I know,
and that's what it is, and I feel, you know, I'd love to just go to a place like that. So when I won that, I felt so happy. Now, a couple of months later, I'm there, and I'm going to be virtually, but I'm going to be hosting a children's writing kind of, and it's just crazy.
So, bringing it round now, what would be your advice to a younger or older writer who is starting out? You know, what's your words of advice to sort of end with?
I suppose just learn about yourself. Learn more about what you want to portray as opposed to what other people are. Because it's so easy to just lose yourself in what other people are doing and feeling like you need to do something they're doing to join them in doing what they're doing, in a sense.
Yeah.
So just lose yourself in yourself a little bit, you know, and the work of others. That's very important. Just read a lot. That's what I do. I enjoy it. And because that's like my self-directed learning, really, is just reading other people's poetry, reading obviously literature, but poetry especially, and finding ways to express myself as a result of looking how others do. Not to try and copy others, to make sure that I am being myself when I do what I do, you know?
Yeah.
And like I said to you, I like the formation of it as a visual art thing. I like how poems are displayed.
Yeah.
I like creating shapes with poems, just have fun with it. So yeah, really just do what you got to do. Go out and just, you know, fill your notebook up, fill your notes up on your phone, whatever it is that you do, just be present in it. Be present.
That's fantastic. And going back to, I think, one of the first things you said was about building a dream, which I think is a really beautiful sort of mantra as well for writing, isn't it? Yeah.
That's exactly how it is. And I always think about that, because I've always been one of those people who build my own dreams before I go to sleep, you know. And I do. I don't know. It's just a nice thing to do, isn't it? You start thinking, yeah, this is me. This is me. That's my life. And because you don't like your own life, but you just build things. It's okay to dream. And then poetry's the same. You look at it and you start building it, and then you go back to it. Very important too to just leave poems, I think. You know, when you're writing poems, and you know, anyone who's seasoned in it knows that it's, you know, poems are not done, are they, on the first time? I don't think, nowhere near. You've got to go back, leave them for a week or two longer. Everybody's different there. And then kind of reevaluate what you was trying to say. I like the editing process. I know a lot of people don't, but I actually like it. I like it.
Yeah. You can always, sometimes I'm reading a poem from 5 years ago out loud, and I change something there.
Yeah.
You know,
Naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Okay.
You're building something, aren't you, when you write a poem?
You are. That's right. Even though we're trying to tear down.
Sorry.
Also, as in a way, some poems tear down. You know, these racist views, these xenophobic views.
That's a good way of
looking. You are building.
Yes, yeah. Well, even then, when you tear something down, you're basically building a new road straight through what you just tore down. You know, something permanent, especially if it's in literature and it's there in print. It's there. It's not going anywhere.
I'd just like to say thank you ever so much for sharing. There's a lot of beautiful nuggets of thought and wisdom in there today, which we could use. And, you know, wow, brilliant. Andy, I hope you captured that.
Thank you so much for having me. And, you know, just go easy with it, go well with it. And, you know, isn't it? That's it. That's what we're all trying to do here. Just be gentle and be kind to ourselves, I think, amongst all the madness, because we have to. So thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed it.